Hey guys, Miniara here, and today we have my long-awaited tank comparison for 7.3. Now before we go further, I want to make some things really clear. This video is being uploaded within the first couple of weeks of 7.3.2, but while nothing really changed that much in 7.3.2 for the tanks outside of a few kind of major things, this video is being made with 7.3 in mind. With that said, it's still relevant for the remainder of Mythic Plus season, so before Mythic Plus rewards go up to plus 15 as a baseline, when Antorus gets released. And it's still relevant for the remainder of Tomb of Sargeras as well. And finally, I'd like to add, for those of you who may not know me, this video is being made from the perspective of someone that has cleared plus 15s on each of the 6 tanking classes, and has also rated Tomb on each of them. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right on into it. At number 6, we have the Paladin. Now, it's with a heavy heart that I put Paladin at number 6, as many of you know, it's one of my favourite tanks. Paladin is definitely in the top 2 for me, and it feels really good. It has a special place in my heart, because I played Paladin all through Emerald Nightmare, and I farmed the 52 traits on it. It was or was it 54 traits? However many traits it was. And I played it religiously, but I have to be unbiased here, and Paladin in 7.3 was quite terrible. With that being said, Paladin could be made to work. It has very strong utility, very strong healing, and off-healing if you decide to use it in that way. Its Blessing and Protection is a really good thing to use on fights such as Kill Jaden. You can use that on yourself or a DPS member to soak the really big circles. Divine Shield has great utility as well. Paladin has good utility in Mythic Plus through interrupts with Avenger's Shield. That's very useful in Mora Souls when you have to deal with a lot of casters and interrupting those heals. But despite all of its benefits, the big downside is getting one-shot. This happens less in 7.3.2 ever since the stand buff, but it was a very major consequence to Paladins in 7.3. And in the current raid tier in Tomb of Sargeras, and the current meta in Mythic Plus, I have to be honest with you guys, you can just get outright killers of Paladin when you have the downside of not having SOTR up. When you reach the point I'm at though, on my Paladin, which is 16, 17, 18,000 haste, you're not really going to see this happen too much. It will still happen sometimes, but it won't happen as much. The downside, however, is a major one. Dying as a tank is unacceptable in most raiding situations, as you'll have to burn a B-res, and when it can happen so suddenly, it's not something raid leaders ever want to see happen, and a massive sigh is let out from any raid leader that ever sees this. Playing any of the other tanks that have a more passive and a more stable form of mitigation is much better for that reason. That being said, Paladin with its very offensive toolkit of Avenger's Shield being able to do massive amounts of damage with that, and the more mobs you're attacking as a Paladin, the more damage you'll do. It's designed very well. SOTR, while it can be punishing, and it has the downsides of being one-shot, well, for a while that was the design of having to save SOTR for the situations where you need it, such as Gul'dan being able to use SOTR when the foe swipe came in, or whatever that was called. I don't remember the ability off by hand. I'll probably leave a tooltip or something like that on screen for you to read. But it's turned from that to the point where you can get one-shot from melee swings, and when I talk about getting one-shot, that's what I mean. Outside of this very one downside, Paladin has no issues. That being said, this downside has been somewhat alleviated with the 10% buff that Paladins received on Tuesday, and it's been further alleviated through the increased gear we've gotten and natural increase in stam over time. As a result of this, plus the set bonuses coming in the new raid tier, Paladin will be a fine choice and definitely a candidate for next tier's top 3 tanks, and to some extent, a candidate for top 1 in Antorus. In Mythic Plus, it's kind of the same deal. You don't get one shot as much, but it can still happen. Paladin's a solid choice, and if you want to play it, I definitely advocate that you do, because as I said, it's my favorite tank. Do keep in mind the downside, and while you might have to deal with it for a little bit right now, eventually the problem will go away. At number 5, we have the Protection Warrior. And it's again with a very heavy side that I do this, but I have to be honest. Protection Warrior is a class that is, well, exactly what you'd expect a warrior to be. It's solid, it's strong, and you're not going to run into situations where your warrior is just going to fall over. But that doesn't mean they're as strong as other tanks like a Demon Hunter or a Death Knight. The warrior has a mitigation style that, using certain legendaries in situations you might be tanking for a prolonged period of time, you can keep your active mitigation up pretty much all the time, based on things like haste and all that sort of stuff. It's very, very strong on physical damage, but opposite of the Paladin that excels at dealing with magical damage, especially if talents like Holy Shield, the Warrior can deal with magical damage when it comes in short burst windows. The way you deal with magical damage is through using Spell Reflect. Spell Reflect will reduce all magical damage you take by 50%, so it's fairly strong. And in addition to that, similar to the Demon Hunter, you can use Legendary Legs in order to give you 2 charges of Spell Reflect. However, when you take a large amount of magical damage over a short burst of time, you'll find yourself unable to deal with that magical damage, and while Paladin and Warrior are my 2 favorite tanks, they're simultaneously the 2 tanks that statistically and realistically are the worst ones. And Warrior is better than Paladin because you will never find yourself in a situation where you can get one shot, and everything else about Warrior is fine. The health pool is a little bit less than that of a Paladin, but you don't really need that because you can keep your active mitigation up all the time, so you don't really need a big bubble to fall upon. You can play Warrior along with Paladin, I guess I should group these together, for everything. You can play it on every boss, and it's a little bit better than Paladin, and people are already making Paladin work in Mythic Kil'jaeden and every other boss, and in high tier Mythic Plus as well. So you can make it work as a Warrior too. It just means you're going to have a bit more of a rough time than a DK, Monk, or Druid would. But it doesn't mean that you can't make it work, and you definitely can. And I would advocate that if you want to play Warrior, to definitely play it. These things being said, Warrior isn't what it was in vanilla BC, Wrath, or Cataclysm. It's not this system where you can't keep yourself alive and you have to rely on Victory Rush procs. Victory Rush is still there for you if you want to get that big heal, and you can sometimes exploit that in a very interesting way, such as the ads in Ivashara. The little ads that spawn on the second boss. You're able to kill those and quickly heal yourself if you need it. But in addition to that, you're able to live for a very large amount of time as a Warrior using Ignore Pain, since you can just soak up a ton of damage, and especially if you're in any situation where you have a ton of gear, you can just soak up so much damage with Ignore Pain, and that's part of how you deal with magical damage as well. That's not to say that Warriors deal with magical damage badly. They just don't deal with it as well as a Demon Hunter does, which is the tank at number 4. Number 4, the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Okay, so it's with another heavy sigh. I am not enjoying making this video. Maybe this is why I put this off so long. Okay, so Vengeance Demon Hunter. Probably the tank I enjoy the most after Paladin, then Warrior, then Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter and DK are kind of tied for that spot there. I enjoy DK a lot as well. But yeah, Demon Hunter is really, really fun. It has really, really strong damage and really strong self-healing. And it has the ability to spec into a old-style Ardent Defender, where if you die, you don't actually die. Very useful. It does get hit quite hard outside of Demon Spikes on very high physical situations. So Demon Hunter isn't that amazing for that reason. But when I say it's not that amazing, I mean if you were to compare it to a Monk or a Druid, it's not as amazing as those 2 tanks. It's still very, very powerful in its own right, and the only reason people don't play it is because it's not as good as X. And this is the same thing that you see with Warrior as well, by the way. Warrior is fine, but it's not as good as something else, so people don't bring it. Overall, I wouldn't worry about it too much if you have decided to play a Demon Hunter tank this tier. Demon Hunters, however, they did receive a health buff by 10% from 55 to 65% this tier in 7.3.2. Of course, talking about that kind of makes me happy that I was able to wait on making this video. Even with that buff that was mostly unnecessary, buffing their health pool helps them deal with really big hits and dire situations. The most important thing as a tank is you have to be sustainable and consistent, and any healer that heals a high 15 plus dungeon is going to tell you this as well. You want to feel like as a healer that you have control over the Mythic Plus or the raid that you have this tank tanking. And you want to feel like you have a good amount of grasp upon that person's health pool. As a Demon Hunter, you can be spiky. Your survivability in meta is amazing, and if you can maintain meta for long periods of time through procs, which you pretty much can, it feels really, really good. But if you suddenly drop meta, you don't have Demon Spikes up, and you take your Fell Claws to the face on Mythic Kil'jaeden, or Heroic Kil'jaeden even, it might hurt you really, really bad. it might not kill you, but it feels spiky. A lot of playing Demon Hunter is planning around when you're going to do things. But when you have Last Resort gone, when you have your self-healing not available, everything else is just out the works and you just flat out die because you don't have Demon Spikes, which on that note, Demon Spike is exactly the same as SOTR, so the exact same situation to Paladin applies. You can die, and it feels bad. But the difference to Paladin from the Demon Hunter is because meta procs so often, more often than not you have 13 plus million health if you have anywhere around 930 item level, and it's not going to be a problem. Demon Hunter is fine, and as I said earlier in this part of the video, there's no other reason people don't play it than it's not as good as a Druid. Of course, with that being said, if you're the kind of person that wants to go around and solo things, Demon Hunter is probably for you. If you want to play Demon Hunter, do play it, but I have to be honest with you in this video, and Demon Hunter is at the spot of number 4 with an unbiased opinion. Number 3, the Blood Death Knight. So now we're kind of getting to the part where it's a little bit closer. The difference between number 4 and number 5 is kind of the same. Number 5 and number 6 is kind of the same. If I was going to use a tier system, I'd probably put all of this into 2 tiers, where 6, 5, 4 is 1 tier, and that would be tier 2, and 3, 2, 1, which is the next 3 tanks I'm going to talk about, is tier 1. Anyway, the Blood Death Knight. So this is one of my favorite tanks. I played Blood Decay a lot last expansion, and while I had initially some issues with Morrowind, once you get used to Morrowind and you realize you can quickly get it up at the beginning of a pull with Dancing Rune Weapon, you don't actually feel too bad about it at all. It feels fine. More than anything, Bone Shield feels like a barrier. It's sort of similar to SOTR, but you keep it up all the time. Of course, you can make it slightly more powerful if you do use the leggings, so you can have more consistently lower damage intake if that's what you're looking for as well. The thing about it though, is DK is strong. There aren't actually any weaknesses. As a Demon Hunter, Warrior, and Paladin, I can look at those 3 classes and tell you that they're mostly fine. I didn't really plan anything. Paladin, I said you have the ability to be one-shot. That's true, I have to be honest about that. Warrior is kind of the same deal. You're strong, you're stable, you don't have any issues. You're not as strong as a Blood Death Knight is. Demon Hunter, same deal. Strong, stable, but you're not the wall of iron that is a Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knights don't have any issues. As I said in a review of the Legion Blood Death Knight that I did in the past a few weeks ago, I guess it would be about a month ago at this point, Blood Death Knight feels stable. It feels like you can constantly keep yourself up. If you're the kind of player that enjoys solo content, you might enjoy this more than a Druid or a Monk, because the Blood Decay has a ton of self-sustainability. If you're the guy that wants to go around and do fun things, like try a solo plus 10s and to plus 15s, try to see how high you can push yourself while still being able to solo things, then the Blood Death Knight is definitely something you might enjoy. Of course, the next 2 options are stronger than Blood Decay for one reason or another. If I did have to pinpoint anything that DK has a problem with there, I would say the issue that DK has, movement speed as a DK is terrible. There's no base increase for movement speed, there's no depth advance anymore. All there is Wraithwalk. And some Death Knights have actually transferred to Goblins. Actually, I know a ton of DKs did this on Kill Jaden, just to have better movement speed to get to the Armageddons quicker. Because if it's super far away all the way on the other side of the room, and you see it late, you won't make it in time if you aren't a Goblin. So some people have actually race changed in order to have more movement, but other people have used the Brutes in order to help with this as well. Movement is a problem as a Blood Decay, but it's not too much of a problem, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Number 2. The Brewmaster Monk. Now, these next 2 tanks can pretty much be bunched together, and you could play either of them and have success. They're pretty much on the same level. So the Brewmaster Monk, before we get to talking about the Druid, the Brewmaster Monk has incredible movement, and it has a lot of other perks too. The damage output of a Monk with the right legendaries is incredible, but that right there is the main thing. I mention this because AoE damage is something most tanks always look at, and AoE as a Monk is good as a baseline, but amazing if you have legendaries, so I need to tell you flat out how much of an increase it is to have them. I do think that something should be done to make it so you can guarantee the legendaries you're going to want to target first. A lot of monks right now are using the shoulders and chest piece most of the time, but then you have a lot of options outside of that. The thing about the monk toolkit, once you get it set up, once you have the legendaries, which even more to the point, that ability to stagger magical damage is actually the talent that you get from Soul of the Grand Master. So what this means is if you're in a dungeon situation, first boss in More Souls again, and you're doing a tyrannical 15, 16, 17, you say, okay, this first boss is going to really hit me hard. I'll just go ahead and put this ring on. You probably just want it for that one boss, and you're able to trade that in and out as much as you want to. Of course, you can only trade it in and out outside of combat, but you can plan for that ahead of time. This gives you a lot of power and a lot of choice. In addition to that, the stagger system in itself is arguably more powerful than Druid mitigation. Druid has some utility that monks don't have access to, and these two things is why Druid and Monk are on their own little tier. It's a tier that Paladin and a few other tanks might come close to touching next tier, but it's its own thing right now. The reason for that is because the Brewmaster Monk's stagger ability pretty much means you have to take over 30 million damage in stagger before you're going to find yourself getting one-shot. And you can endlessly purify that and plan around it, assuming that you have the brew charges to do so. Of course, a lot of this takes practice. It is the hardest tank to play, and that's not a debate because when to purify stagger is a question that everyone's going to ask. And you want to purify it as much as possible, but purify it at the best times, and a lot of that is just playing the game and working out when that is. In addition to that, you want to maintain Iron Skin as much as possible, and especially you want to maintain Iron Skin any situation where you're going to get hit hard. Overall, Monk is a good stable, and if you want to be the class that's always taken to raids and always wanted in dungeons and raids, Monk's definitely a very, very good option. I would personally tell you that I think Monk has better damage reduction than Druid does. And many people agree with me, but at the same time many people disagree, because of how great Druid is. But I personally think that Druid's not as good as Monk. Alright, so number 1, Druid. I want to make this video next here and not say that number 1 is Druid. I want to say number 1 is either Monk or Paladin. Or even Demon Hunter. Number 1 is Druid. Here's why. Battle Res is an amazing thing. Battle Res is extremely powerful, and in any situation you can exploit this to either skip mobs in Mythic Plus, or res someone and be able to finish out a fight that you otherwise might not be able to. Number 2, Stampeding Roar. Stampeding Roar, especially with the talent that I'll leave on the screen right now, is an extremely powerful thing. It allows you to have a range that will hit everyone, and you also get a personal movement speed increase for every person you hit. This can be used on Kill Jaden to help your raid. Druid is the only tank in the game that has a raid-wide cooldown that has any kind of sizable impact right now. And that's kind of why it lands where it does on the list, because it simultaneously has something that no other tank has outside of Blood Death Knight in a dungeon situation. It has amazing self-healing and good personal damage reductions through things like Iron Fur and stuff like that. But simultaneously, at the same time as that, it has good self-healing. There's a downside. You don't have magic reduction at all. Mark of Ursol got removed, and thank God for that, because I don't even want to think how good Druids would be right now with Mark of Ursol. Of course, it kind of sucked for a while that Mark of Ursol was removed. The first boss in More Souls is yet again a great example, and the only other way to reduce magical damage was to stack burst, so the idea eventually turned into, if you're going to be dealing with a lot of magical damage, you needed to have some versatility, which still meant the Druids had a way of dealing with it, but they didn't have the way of dealing with it the Paladins did, which I think was definitely good because it gave tanks like Paladins, Warriors, Demon Hunters with their Empower Wards and Spell Reflect abilities a way to deal with magical damage that a Druid couldn't. It was a way to kind of justify taking those other tanks over Druid, and a way to say, well, I can't do this thing that Druid can do, but I can do this other really cool thing. Specifically, the Warriors, their Spell Reflect ability is extremely powerful in Karazhan on Shade of Medivh. Warriors have a Spell Reflect, which is unique, and that's also why they're above Paladins on this list, because they have something that no other class has. Unfortunately, despite this, with all the physical damage in Tomb, Druids just ended up being top tier anyway. Druid has cooldowns that help the raid, and help the dungeon group. They have the ability to stealth past mobs, to res the healer. They have the ability to slow mobs, which many tanks have, but that's something added that Druids have, and they have utilities like knockbacks that no other tank has. Druid is number 1 because of that in dungeons, and their damage reductions, their cooldowns, their self-healing, and everything else that Druid has makes them arguably number 1 in raids as well. And I'd definitely rather play a Demon Hunter or a Death Knight because of the self-healing in a dungeon. But when trying to push higher keys and when trying to get to 15 for the first time with a coordinated group, you have to respect the toolkit that Druid has. The only thing it doesn't have is magic reduction, but more often than not, Frenzied Regen will be enough for you. Alright guys, well, this was a video that I kind of put together in one sitting, mostly because of how delayed it was due to my ability to not make videos over the past month, and I did promise this video, so here it is for you. Druid's still at the top. Monk is arguably better than Druid, and I actually prefer to play Monk over Druid. Even though Paladin's at number 6 right now, and I had to be honest about that, I wasn't happy at all putting it there, nor was I happy about putting Warrior where I did. But when you're making a list, there is a number, and I know people always get triggered at what's number 6. And even if there's reasons that I put something somewhere, you could play any tank in the game and do well. So at the end of the day, play what you want. Finally though, I guess I'd like to say I'm sorry that this video is as rushed together as it is. I think I got across all the points, but I think with BlizzCon being in 1 week, not all of us want to sit here and focus on the problems. We want to sit here and look to the future, and the future I see is very bright. I see a future in Antaurus where none of us are going to be in situations where we can't play a certain tank. I feel everything's going to have its place, and I feel Druid's not going to have massive swings over Paladins or Warriors. And we're also not going to be in Tomb of Soak Garrus anymore, where being able to solo soak on Maiden of Vigilance is extremely valuable. So Warriors are going to be a lot better because of that, since a Warrior is one of the tanks that struggle with that since they have limited cooldowns outside of Last Stand and Shield Wall. And Paladin was really good on that fight, but since Paladin's getting more haste and stuff like that, it's just going to overall be a better class, and with the added benefit of increased block and Holy Shield, we're going to see some good things, I feel. This video, out of all of them, was probably the least fun to make. Usually I invest a ton of time, I edit things, and I put the pros and cons list up. And I didn't even talk about the fact that critical block sometimes doesn't work on some abilities in dungeons. That's actually kind of a problem, but it's not too much of a problem, so I didn't even really bring that up. I tried to make this video being as positive as possible, and hopefully I got that across to you guys. So I guess at the end of the day, while I did enjoy making this video, I didn't enjoy it as much because I didn't have the time to put effort into it like I did with my previous ones. Since I did want so badly to get this video out before BlizzCon, so after BlizzCon does happen over the weekend, we can just talk about that next week instead. That's something that will change in the future. In 7.3.2, I'm gonna do a much better tank comparison video, similar to what we saw in the past. Look forward to that. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. All my information is in the description down below the video, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy, and farewell.